this fall, and I've been struck by a couple things. One, how well Unitarian Universalism is doing in the state of Oregon. We are thriving out here. And two, how different churches are. So I was just in Central Oregon. I was preaching at Bend this past Sunday, and I said, you know, of course, our fellowship in Florence sends their enthusiastic love and greetings. And if you have anything to tell them, greetings in return, let me know. And everyone at Bend said, yes, naturally. They send their greetings to you. And a couple nights ago, I was, back home in Eugene at our Board of Trustees meeting, and I said, I'm going to be in Florence again. And they said, tell them we said, hi! So our Board of Trustees in Eugene is thinking of you all. I've let everyone know that you have land and you're looking forward to the future, that you're at capacity basically every Sunday. And I wanted to let you know also what a blessing this fellowship is to me, to be able to return here to the warmth of your love, your fellowship and community, your wonderful snacks. This is a special place. And I wanted to talk about plants today, because we're right on the cusp of winter. And no matter how long you live in Oregon, when the sun goes away and the clouds come back, it's a time for reflection. For some of us, a little depression, right? And although the leaves fall, there's this second flourishing in the winter of other plants, of the grasses, of the mosses. So it's a time of a turnover where some of our plant life goes to rest and others come into their fullest being. It's a great time for meditation. So there's this orchid that grows in Europe, ever smaller and smaller in range, called the Ophrys apifera. And this orchid has remained essentially unchanged for millions of years. It's the same flower, and I'll tell you why. It's got a couple of unusual behaviors, and we don't often think of plants as having behaviors, but here's what this one does. It periodically appears to go extinct in one country or another for 5, 10, 20 years, only to mysteriously show back up in force for a season, or several seasons, in enormous numbers, all at once, and then disappears again. So we never really know where it's gone extinct or not. The Ophrys apifera knows. It's not our business. But what it's really notable for is having spent millions of years evolving to look exactly like a normal flower with a bumblebee inside of it. The Ophrys apifera means the bee orchid. But the bee is just another part of the flower. And specifically, it looks like a specific female bumblebee. And the point is that it will attract the male bumblebee, right, to come land on it. And that's how it used to get pollinated. And it's been doing that for tens of millions of years. But in most places where it grows, the bee, the Eucera bee, for what it's worth, is long gone. Hasn't been there for eons. So the orchid wound up self-pollinating itself and never changing its appearance again, because it's now the same flower. So they self-pollinate, and they remain the only evidence we have, not of what the bee used to look like, because we can find some, they're still floating around the Mediterranean, buzzing around. It's the only evidence we have of how the bees would have looked to each other. Not how humans would have seen the bee, but how the male bee would have seen the female bee, with their bee vision. Wholly independent of human perception, this dying, mysterious, weird little orchid has recorded something from the point of view of another species. And while I can't say that plants are conscious, not in the sense that they know things or have emotions like we do, I am fascinated by the idea that plants live out entire mysterious lives without caring one whit what humans are doing. They're just going about their mysterious planty business. And while many of us think of plants as unmoving, in that most of them are literally rooted in one place, even the ones that aren't rooted don't seem to ambulate on purpose, but they do move outside the space of human perception. Most of us don't stand still long enough to witness the sunflower track the sun across the sky. They operate on a different time scale than ours, one that escapes our notice, but they are moving all the time, tracking the sun, unfurling this or that, sending out new shoots, or feeling their way around rocks with their roots. They are moving with purpose. Have you ever seen one of those enormously overgrown oak trees that just swallows a fence, and then you never get that chain link fence back again? They do this over 50 years while no one was paying attention. That sort of plant life stops me in my human tracks. Because as a religious person and a Unitarian Universalist, I have a reverence for life in all its multiplicity, in its creativity, its unknownness, its mystery. And I think that there is a way of being alive that I will never understand because I'm not a plant. So outside my own understanding and experience of how it is we interact politely with fences and what fences are for, that I think it's worth meditating on. Especially because we seem to be the only creatures whose job it is to meditate on things. On behalf of the known universe. Alan Watts famously wrote, "Through our eyes, the universe is perceiving itself. Through our ears, the universe is listening to its harmonies. We are the witnesses through which the universe becomes conscious of its glory, its magnificence." We're part of the universe. We are like one small organ. We are the ear, we are the eyes. And yes, it absolutely counts as an act of witness and reverence when we say, "Oh my God, did you see that tree that ate a fence? Pull over! Let's take a selfie with this tree." Absolutely, it doesn't have to take place in church. That's religious naturalism. Religion comes from the Latin religare, which means to bind repeatedly. What is it you find yourself bound to? What is it you treat repeatedly with reverence, with respect and awe? What is it you find worthy of your repeated, dedicated attention? For many Unitarian Universalists, we're not sure if there's an afterlife, we're not sure if there's a deity, but we are sure of the natural world, of its grandeur, its brilliance, its worthiness of our respect and our attention. Through our eyes, the universe is perceiving itself. And we do this because we have complex neurology, which plants don't. They don't have the kind of neurology that would allow them to think, or to read Alan Watts quotes, or to laugh in church. But they do perceive, and they do communicate with each other, both chemically and through touch. If you've ever moved a houseplant to a different room and had it immediately drop half of its leaves in protest, yes, even though you moved it there because the light was better, like I did this for your own good, and this is how you respond?
You didn't ask.
Right, yeah, we didn't ask. Then you know that plants can definitely tell something has changed. They can tell if something's amiss, and to a creature that's supposed to be rooted its entire life, sensing a 15-foot change in the light is definitely cause for concern. Like something has gone gravely wrong in this plant's life. And now it's time to panic. This is a crisis for your pothos. They notice. They notice things. And plants communicate information within themselves, of course. They use rudimentary electrical signals to send messages to their leaves. Unfurl. That's how they know. But moreover, while it might be tempting to assume that it's every plant for itself, plants communicate abundantly. Not just within their own species, but with other species of plants, with animals, insects. So when attacked by insects, some plants will put out a chemical signal warning their neighbors to beef up their chemical defenses and become deliberately less tasty on purpose. So the insects will go, ew, and fly away. Some plants send out chemicals from their roots, literally just to get the attention of beneficial fungi, to say, hey guys, over here, come grow your beneficial fungal selves, and we'll absorb your nutrients. They're communicating. And if you've ever noticed a bright, beautiful blossom, so beautiful you couldn't ignore it and you had to go over there, or if you've ever smelled a delicious ripe peach, yes, that just said, please take me. Congratulations, a plant has communicated successfully with you. But that also goes if you've ever been seared by poison oak, doesn't it? Which is admittedly less magical. But plants, be assured, they are not operating under the assumption that they operate in a vacuum. Plants operate with us, here. I used to think of bouquets of flowers as being both beautiful but kind of sad. Yeah. That we've responded to their beauty, their communication, come sniff me, come pollinate me, by cutting them down at the prime of their life. Every bouquet of flowers is a flower that's going to die soon. What a shame. To spend your whole season reaching for the sun, stretching to fulfill your planting potential, only to wind up moldering on Sarah's kitchen counter for gratification of humans. But this past spring, I was out hiking near Eugene, and I noticed all the camas flowers, which grow abundantly up here in the Pacific Northwest. And so I looked them up because being an Easterner, I didn't know. And I started reading. If they're not discouraged or eaten, supposedly the roots are tasty, camas flowers will fill up entire meadows or entire states. Edge to edge, they will cram themselves into a meadow. And once the field is completely full, not all of those flowers need to be pollinated. It only takes a few to keep regenerating. And the rest of the flowers, what are they there for? If they're not doing anything.
Bouquets.
Bouquets. They're literally just there to be beautiful, to attract the attention of bees. Because some of them will be successful, and the rest of them just have to flower. That's it, that's what they do. They're literally just there to be looked at. It's their job. And so I got to thinking that arguably reproduction is only one reason for flowers or anything else to exist. Not every flower is going to do it. No pun intended. But unpollinated or cut flowers are not a waste. Not if we're the universe observing itself. Their purpose is to be beautiful. And what is it that makes bouquets so beautiful anyway? All the different shapes, the different colors, the different scents, all brought together. Each flower doing its best in its own unique way to make something beautiful out of the fabric of this world that we live in. Each flower turning carbon and water into a different shape, a different poem, a different song, in its own way. And when I look at them, I think it's hard for me to say what a good human life looks like. Beyond bringing your own diversity, your own uniqueness to the shared bouquet. Especially because not all of us have children Some of us do, and it's beautiful and wonderful, but there are many ways to flower. Simply being who you are in a society driven by conformity, where you can get off at any highway rest stop and see the exact same McDonald's, is increasingly an act of religious reverence for what it is to be alive and flourishing on this natural earth. And I think it's an act of reverence that we celebrate each other in all of our glorious diversity, and that we protect each other. That we come together in this bouquet on Sundays. Now, when I see one tiny sprout coming up from a crack in the sidewalk, I feel so moved by that little plant's tiny struggle and bravery. The plant does not care. But I, as a human, feel like putting up a tiny road cone. Don't squish this sprout. It's worked so hard. So hard. And that's just me projecting my human feelings onto something that has no feelings. Not in the emotional sense, right? But that's me doing what humans do. We are so good at projecting our feelings onto creatures and objects of dubious sentience that not only did we make a monument out of the old man of the mountain, you know that? It's in New Hampshire. It's that big rock face that looked kind of like a face. We made a national monument out of that. When it fell down, which rocks do on Earth, we then turned it into the old man of the mountain memorial site, which is, it's true. I've been there. It's a nationally protected place where something that kind of looked like a face used to be. We lost face. Yes, it's true. I didn't know it had fallen until I got there. I was grievously disappointed. But
It's all important.
yes, but if the flowers are doing what they do, not knowing what the outcome will be, but just flourishing, and if we do what we do, perhaps we were meant to feel something for them. The Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas once argued that plants might have legal rights within the context of human society because we care. He wrote, "Inanimate objects are sometimes parties in litigation." This is just the facts, right? A ship has a legal personality. It's a useful fiction for maritime purposes. So it should be, he wrote, as respects valleys, alpine meadows, rivers, lakes, estuaries, beaches, rivers, groves of trees, swampland, or even air that feels the destructive pressures of modern technology and modern life. The voice of the inanimate object should not be stilled. Last year, a river in New Zealand was granted legal personhood. Yes, meaning it can now be represented in court by its legal guardians, its protectors. Who? Us. Humans, right? Humans who care. And such movements to grant rivers or trees legal personhood are often led by indigenous peoples, whose cultures and religions hold that we are still in relationship with what's around us. And I would say all of us are always in relationship with what's around us, but some of us live in societies that deny that or pretend it's not so. If you grew up in a religious tradition that told you that God gave you dominion over the animals and the task to subjugate the earth, then it's not surprising to see what Western society has done to our environment. These days, when we're faced with the dire reality of climate change, with Venice now underwater, yeah, I think it's more important than ever to appreciate the plants religiously in their beauty and diversity, to celebrate them, to revere the natural world of which we are all a part, and of which we are but one flowering alongside them. We are one way of being, one way of living among so many. the many being necessary to there being any at all. Say that 3 times fast. Now, in my native New Jersey, winter is when the plants all die off. It just gets very brown and gray. But you know, here in Oregon, now we're seeing, just now, the mosses and the lichens fluff themselves back up. It's like the trees are wearing sweaters. Lichens, not technically a plant. You can talk to me about this during our conversations. And they're getting really good and green and seem kind of happy, don't they? Enthusiastic lichens. They're just going for it. There are so many seasons to life, right? Not just a life, but life as a whole. The life of a community, the life of a person, or a family, or a species, or many species. There are times of rest, times of flourishing, times of warning and danger, chemical signals, right? Times of putting down roots or sending out new vines, and a time of rest and quiet. For all of us, though it might be a time of flourishing for others. Now, I can't promise at this point that the environment will be okay. We can say it'll never be the same. We know that. But I do believe we can still find beauty amidst this crisis. In fact, we should find beauty. The Ophrys apifera, the bee orchid, has kept its faith these millions of years. It's doing a good job. It has not neglected its duty, nor should we neglect ours. Part of our job as one of the most sentient, neurologically complex creatures is to bless the flowers with our attention. And I'll close by this poem by Tony Hoagland called Please Don't. Please don't tell the flowers. They think the sun loves them. The grass is under the same simple-minded impression about the rain, the fog, the dew. And when the wind blows, it feels so good they lose control of themselves and swab toggle wildly around, bumping accidentally into their slender neighbors. Forgetful little lotus eaters. Solar-powered hydroholics, drawing nourishment up through their stems into their thin green skin, high on the expensive chemistry of mitochondrial explosion, believing that the dirt loves them, the night, the stars, reaching down a little deeper with their pale albino roots, all Dizzy Gillespie with the utter sufficiency of everything. They don't imagine lawnmowers, the 4 stomachs of the cow, or human beings with boots who stop to marvel at their exquisite flexibility and color. They persist in their soft-headed hallucination of happiness. But please don't mention it. Not yet. Tell me, what would you possibly gain from being right?